Boom. Go for it, Don.
I'm going to start with a very quick screen sharing. We all gotten the significance of that.
Is there a caption there?
Oh, yeah.
I can't see the caption.
Oh, the caption on the bottom says, "Good morning, everyone. I brought the donuts." And let's stop sharing. And good morning, everyone. I brought the coffee. I'm zoomed out, but I'm not. And I'm just curious how Dan and I were talking, and we're curious how you guys are doing. Too much Zoom, not enough Zoom, enjoying the entertainment of it, actually learning something, doing more Zooming with square dancing or with other things. Just, it's been a year of doing this, or pretty close to a year on this particular group.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So I guess this triennial thing happens every 3 years. This year, because of the pandemic and the Zooms, you got a lot more participation this year than you've had in the past?
Do we have anyone here that's on the committee? I haven't. I know that
on a couple, but yeah. There's a lot more participation. There has been. Some people are looking forward to it. A lot of people want to really continue with it. And at least once a year have the meetings, the Caller Lab meetings via Zoom as well as in person.
On some of the other committees that I'm on, yeah, I get to go where I normally don't get to participate very much. So it's done. For me personally, I have been sort of isolated and out of things for quite a while, and this has gotten me back in, and I've really enjoyed it. I run 3 Zoom sessions a week. If you call me running this one or Dan running it. And the biggest stress is trying to figure out what to do on Saturdays, but the other ones work fine. I guess I'll be up to 4 in the middle of this coming week. My wife is on Zoom all the time because she's a therapist and sees clients that way and has clinic meetings. It's great for not having to commute. It's really given some opportunities, and I've gotten new friends from all around the world this way. But it's, but you're constantly having to do something. And some people have said they're zoomed out, and I don't know. I guess this is a discussion. I'm just curious how the rest of you do it. Do you do more Zooming for square dancing or other things? What are the, anybody speak?
Well, I know I run sessions every Sunday night. It's a basic and mainstream review session. I'm on my 3rd time around with them, and people still want to come to them. Now, I originally started this because I wanted to extend it to my club members, because I used to hold summer reviews in my family room that I have. And of course, we can't do that with COVID. So when Zoom came along, I thought, oh, what a great opportunity. I have a grand total of 2 people out of my club that come to it. But I've got people from across the country that are coming to this thing that, I never would have met them otherwise. And they still want to continue. They still want to do it. Some of them have been there for all 3 sessions. I know Denise Carbonell runs her Friday dances at 2. Most of the people that dance on there from overseas, they want to continue this. So it's the dancers want it. And that's why I keep going on it. It is a little tedious to keep redoing the same things over and over again, but because the dancers want it, I do it.
I'm wondering if when the COVID thing is over, whether we will be switching from 2 couples Zoom dancing to 4 couples Zoom dancing. Will people be getting together and you'll be able to do some regular calling?
That would be nice.
But calling to real people in person would be nice.
There was a few people like Jaden Frigo and a couple of others that were doing Skype dances. very much. They'd be calling all over the world, but remotely from their homes. It was a live interactive thing. It was pretty interesting, but I still haven't figured out how Jaden got past the technology. But what you're saying, Phil, that's pretty common in a lot of areas, that a lot of callers that are doing the Zoom things, or a lot of newer callers are putting these up. Most of their audience is not from their regular club or their local area. It's usually from abroad or internationally, or just people wanting to do something. I have no idea, or maybe it's just because they're waiting for the club to restart so they can dance in person. They always get to hear that person, so now they get a chance to hear people, hear people like yourself and Denise and all the people that she gets on to present. So that could be what the draw is. I don't know.
I guess that remains to be seen,
It has definitely added an international flavor, more of knowledge of what's going on in other parts of the world relative to dancing, and all the different nuances and such.
Especially the callers. I mean, I've listened to callers that I never would have had the opportunity to listen to.
Even from that, what you just said there, Don, that's a major thing. There's a lot of Caller Lab members and callers that have realized that dancing is not the same everywhere in the world, or what is normal in one area is not normal. We've all given lip service to this and chalk it up to regional differences, but there are some radical differences as to what is considered normal. There was a discussion on, I believe it was Recycle just recently, as to boy, girl, boy is the standard. It's a gender call in my area, same as Past the Ocean, those kinds of things, which have really raised ire across the states and across the world about how movements are used, how they're done. And then that, of course, generates into the discussion of, well, you're going overboard, you're not going overboard, but that's a whole different question. I think it's a great platform for actually realizing what is standard around the world and coming a little bit closer together to getting back to, we have standardized calls, we have a certain parameter, which is your what's the word I'm looking for? Not your standard applications rather than your extended applications, but what is standard application, I think, is getting redefined a little bit.
This is a slight aside. I've done that all the time, but for years I've been looking for a good analogy to square dancing to tell non-square dancers so they'd understand why we love it. And the closest I could come to it, and I've been asking people and nobody's given me a real thing, chess moving people around, but that's not really the same thing. The closest I've come to it is it's like a language. We learn all the words. We know there's certain rules how you can put words together to make sentences, but we don't know the story that's coming. The caller can create a story by putting words together differently each time. Sometimes it can be humorous, sometimes otherwise. And where that relates to what we're talking about now, we all know the same language. We just don't know the different accents that people use when they speak the language. That's the global differences are considered the accents in the English language or such. By the way, I'm still open for a good analogy when people want to talk about that, or let me know.
You can say we all know the same language. You just get together and talk about it.
Well, that's what we do. We're all Zooming, and we're just getting together, Zooming on Zoom today.
But when we're dancing, we're talking in the language. So we're talking the language when we get together for our dances.
I've been known to compare it to parade marching, or marching to a drill sergeant, giving the commands in rhythm, in cadence, or moving to the music, same thing.
I guess what I'm trying to say is we all are bitten by the bug. We've tried it. We love it. There's a certain something that makes us want to continue staying in the activity and doing it. How do I pass that emotion to a non-dancer to let them know that they could get that emotion by coming to square dancing? I mean, in a lot of ways, I agree with what you're saying, Daryl, but I don't want to say you too could be in a marching band. You know, that's not going to draw them into it. You too could be, as I say, the closest I can think is you too could be listening to a storyteller telling good stories and telling good jokes and either speaking good grammar or poor grammar, etc. You know, I want something that I can tell a non-dancer that's going to say, "Oh God, that sounds like fun. I want to get into it." But as I said, that's drifted from the conversation of are you zoomed out or not.
Well, this,
No.
you're going right back. You're going right back to that presentation we had a couple weeks ago about flyers. You know, you got to figure out what the hook you want to put on the flyer to bring them in. We've always been looking for the hook. We need the hook to get them in the door. So that's been a common theme for a long time. You got to find the right hook.
That's what I'm looking for, a hook.
Okay.
There was a
Well-
big drive. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Okay, I'm just taking the video off. I was moving the laptop from another room. So what we use is Friendship in Motion. And that seems to help some of the newer people. It's the socialization aspect. I think you can, I've talked to numerous people online now, you know, through Zoom, and what it comes down to is if you don't have that social impact in your group, you're not going to have the same level of people really wanting to square dance. So it's the exercise of square dancing, but the magic ingredient is the friendships within the group.
That's why Jim Mayo has been preaching for quite a few years now about sociability.
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen Jim since the last physical color lab. He's not being social enough.
It's called retired.
He's still writing.
Yeah. I mean, I had a Zoom meeting just the other day, and this particular topic came up. And they've got one group who is not only retaining their members, but getting more. And they say the reason, and people that have moved out of town actually come back to this group on a regular basis and still think of this group as their main group, even though they've moved years ago. And they say it's for that particular group, the social aspect comes first, and then the dancing is secondary, and that is maintaining what they want is having a group that works. And they say when they didn't focus on that, their membership would drop. So it's the barbecues and the picnics, and they said that for one point that they were going to go and dance outside, and the weather changed, and they ended up huddling inside. And when the rain stopped, instead of going to dancing, they looked and said, "Oh, let's just talk for a little while longer." When you have that kind of a group where they would even prefer to socialize dance to dance, then you've got a strong group, and they help each other. When something happens during the week or something, they know they can call somebody and say, "Hey, I just need a second pair of hands to lift something," or whatever, right? I think then you've got a strong square dance group.
Dan, you were doing that all the time, Dan.
Dan, you just put something in the chat, and I mentioned before, I'm not good at reading the chat until after the whole session's over, but I think, was it about how many people actually go back and look at the videos of things, or why? Why don't you tell me what that was about?
Yeah, I'm completely zoomed out, and have to force myself for things like I missed Don's mental image class on Thursday, and I need to go back and watch that. But some of our Zoom videos are actually getting a large number of views. Tony Park's presentation to us on the diversity in square dancing got 370 some odd views so far. Several of our other sessions have 150 views. A few of them have 25 or 30. So I don't know what makes YouTube report something as a view. What constitutes a view? whether it's just, oh, click in, click away. But I'm interested in how people find value in these sessions as presentations rather than as conversations.
I know that the COVID class and Mel has had a lot of speakers on that I've wanted to listen to and say, well, I can't do it tonight. I'm zoomed out for the day, but I'll go back and listen to the videos. And rarely have I gotten the time to go back. I just seem to have too many other things of life getting in the way. But it's great when you go back and see that some people have actually gone back and looked at the videos.
Can I make a comment to what Dan just said?
Definitely.
About viewing and not actually participating in the conversation. Often I'm on here and I'm in the background. I'm a caretaker, I'm a farmer, I'm a homeschool mom and a caller. And so I often have so much going on, but I'm still listening and I am learning just hearing the conversation back and forth between new callers, experienced callers, and what comes up. So it is valuable, even if you're not a part of the conversation.
That's good feedback, Cece. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what Dan said as well, it's really, really interesting watching the number of people that go back and watch it. It's interesting because Bill Elling and Tracy Brown sent me some music to look at, and I went to look up the original of the song just to figure out what they are. And when you look up some song lyrics or things like that, what you get coming up on the search is square dance releases. They're up in the top 10. So people looking for music are actually looking for square dance music. There's square dance videos that are going out. If you're looking for music videos or dance, there's square dance. It's getting up there. So it's obviously one of the more popular things in the counts that are on searches. And it's the same with ours. There's a lot of people that go back. But what I find interesting is on a lot of these caller sessions, like your sessions, on my sessions, there's a lot of dancers that are tuning in to actually hear what goes in on the background as well. And that's opened up a number of eyes for dancers. Back to your original question, though, a friend of mine, Paul Adams, before he passed, he was a very strong proponent of he called it the 10-second elevator cell. People would say, oh, square dancing or something like that. Just find yourself a good 10-second blurb to answer that question. Oh, square, oh, what's that? Like, a good 10-second sound bite of what it is, walk away. If they want to know more, they'll come and get you. And apparently that really worked for him as a hook. I wish I had the text of what he had to say on it because he was very successful with it. But just a quick sound bite to draw them in and let them come to you. And he said it works great.
Well, I find it's kind of hard to get back and watch the videos because I've got so many other interests and they are also doing the Zoom videos also. So I'm like Cece, there's just a lot on the go.
Hello? What? What are you doing? I've eventually managed to get onto this Zoom meeting.
Phil, one of the things that you said you were getting out of this was getting to hear other callers that you hadn't heard. I agree with that. When I was starting calling, and even after calling quite a while, I would go to a lot of dances. There were a lot of traveling callers coming through, and one of the criteria of going to a dance would be, oh, I'm curious what he sounds like. And got to know a lot of people that way and their calling styles and learning from it too. And there seems to be less traveling callers, plus I'm doing less dancing in more isolated area. So Zoom has given me an opportunity to get to hear some of these people but not only Zoom, but YouTube, some of the people that I've gotten to know through Facebook or Zoom sessions or what have you, but just getting to hear other people call and what the current state of the art, science, whatever it is. Helen?
I've been thinking about the fact that if I don't do Zoom dancing, because for me, it's very much the dancing and the interaction with other people. So I'm not interested in doing it on my own. But if we get into a state where you can call well remotely, I'm thinking, what will be the difference? I mean, why do we have a dance with our local neighbor, the next county's caller? Why don't we take some great caller from the United States instead? Do you think that there will be a more difficult for the newer beginners or the less known callers when they sort of are competing with all the callers all around the world?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Mel was mentioning that there were some callers doing Skype calling before the pandemic and before Zoom. I think you can't beat the face-to-face contact with the caller as well as just the dancers with each other. But there's something, a good connection of seeing the dancers and being able to respond to them directly, and they feel the personal interaction and what have you. So I think you'll get the best of both worlds, both local and distant callers that find it not economical to travel that much anymore.
I think that if you set up a couple of cameras and sort of you're good at this stuff, I think you'll be able to make it, that the caller will be absolutely be able to see what's going on and even hear what's going on. So I have a feeling that this might be, something that's a wonderful chance for a small club to have a really good and well-known caller from someone, from somewhere else. I'm just because we're talking about these kind of things in other Zoom meetings. I mean that although when we even when we can get back to meeting each other for different lessons and things that we're doing, they want us also to record it on Zoom because some people don't want to have to travel. And I'm thinking that I'm wondering what's going to happen in the square dance world.
I don't think that Zoom dancing is that great. And with technology being buggy and lags and stuff, I wouldn't want to have all my dances on Zoom. That would not be, just think of how many times we get disconnected while we're in a Zoom meeting. Oh, you're in the middle of a dance, you're flying through, and then all of a sudden the connection is not there and you lose it. I don't think it will, once we get back on the floor, I don't think the square dancers as a whole would choose Zoom rather than a live dance on a regular basis.
Daryl?
Being fairly new at this, I probably don't know the real answer, but a caller, if you're going to dance to something on Zoom, you might as well dance just to a recording. A live caller connects with the floor, and the ones that you like to dance to best are the ones that are best at judging the floor, connecting verbally to the floor as the dance is going on. It's a programming tool, and those that are better at it generally exceed the ones that don't. But other than that, if it's just a matter of the calls coming across nicely, just get some recordings. I don't think the Zoom adds a whole lot to it.
I'm agreeing with you, Daryl, with the contact with the floor, but Clark, tell me about tape dancing. People have been doing that forever. Challenge level.
So usually, here's the advantages of tape dancing. You get your own square. You do it in your garage or basement. Someone's the leader. They're not a caller, but they're in charge. Someone usually provides refreshments. You go at the pace the group wants to go, and you feel that all of you are in it together. And you don't need one of those callers to be telling you that they're the big shot in charge. So it's self-organized, just like having a little game group that meets or a bridge group or whatever. And sometimes it works well. Sometimes you don't like the caller on the tape and you change tapes. Sometimes the tape is too hard. Sometimes it's too easy. Sometimes it's boring. But it's you guys kind of not necessarily against the caller on the tape, but the caller on the tape is not the main focus. I think it's rare for someone, at least I'm not aware of it, to get a hall, have 8 squares of dancers, and then play a tape of a caller. I do that at a square dance weekend every once in a while, but it's more to show this is what calling was like in 1965. Let's dance to Deuce Williams for a tip. Or here's a famous caller who you've never heard of. Let's dance to him for a tip. But so that's tape dancing. I agree that I've called 1 or 2 dances over Skype. This would be probably, more than 5 years ago. And it took a lot of technology. It was just to 1 square in someone's basement. I had a camera aimed at them so I could see them. I could hear them. They could hear me. I don't know that they could see me. And it was hard for me to react and get the timing right. I just had to assume they were going to do the call and keep plowing on. And if they really needed that extra half-second pause, they didn't get it from me. So I'm not worried that we're suddenly going to start having Zoom dances around the world with really good callers, and that's going to make it harder for newer callers. I think there's always there's going to be room for a newer caller getting a square or 2 and teaching them to dance.
Hope so. Hope so.
Yeah, that would be pretty bad, I think, if it was like television. Only the people that were superstars on TV got to perform and nobody else did. I think that would definitely take away from what we're doing. Dan, I know you do a bunch of Zoom sessions that are not square dance related. I see Keith has just joined us. I know he does a bunch of non-square dance related things. How does the balance? Anybody else do more Zooming non-square dance wise than square dance wise? And so doing a few Zooms a week for square dancing, you're zoomed out because you've got 40 other topics you're interested in.
So I host a local forum that's happening about every 2 weeks on development issues. And see, what other ones do I host? A few others. And then, of course, for work, I'm on Zoom quite a bit during or not Zoom, Google Hangouts, but same difference during the day. And I think that contributes to it. This kind of I'm having a conversation with people, but I'm not looking them in the eyes, and not, we're all semi-detached from it, is, I think, part of what contributes to the fatigue. So recently, by the time Saturday rolls around, it's like, there's great topics. I love the conversations here, but I just want to go isolate myself in my shop or do something else.
Carol?
Yes. Oh, excuse me.
Who was going? Me?
Carol,
No?
I saw your hand first because you're in the middle of my screen.
Well, I must admit my diary is absolutely chock-a-block. I have at least 4 Zoom sessions every day. I must admit the majority of them are square dancing. That is in actual Zoom dancing, the different levels. As well, then you add on the other ones like these, what we're talking now. And then I've got other committee meetings and several committees I'm on. And of course, family. So I haven't included family in those. And now that the companies and things that I'm dealing with are now coming back onto stream, that is, they're beginning to open, I didn't have much time at all because of the Zoom sessions. I'm having even less time, so I'm having to cut some of those out now. So it's really taken over my life. It's been good. And you know, you were talking about Zoom dancing when people are actually live on the floor again, having a caller via Zoom. And we're contemplating that. We have a particularly fantastic broadband in our area, and Di Green is one of our regular callers. We might have heard of Di, and but she lives 3.5 hour drive away, so she, you know, she's got a long way to come for an evening session. So we're toying with that idea, not on every week, but on a rota perhaps. So
we're all saving commuting time, but for me that's a disadvantage. I always listen to podcasts, and I'm falling behind on some of my regular ones. I'm not in the car frequently enough. Daryl,
that's fine if you're working full time like Di does, for instance. She gets home from work, she has to give up some of her working hours, so she's not getting paid, in order to travel to come to call, and she gets home at sort of 1 o'clock in the morning and it's got to be up at work for 6. It's hard.
Daryl, and then Clark.
Yes. Other things that you do other than square dance related, every Sunday evening we do have a family get together, a family Zoom. We get brothers, sisters, kids, grandkids. It's quite a meeting there. Not a meeting, it's a congregation. Okay, and that's nice because through the COVID we don't really get to physically interact with anybody, but it's always nice to be sitting face to face and visiting. Other than that, every other Tuesday night, we have an Oregon State callers and dancers Zoom, where we've been talking about ways of reopening square dancing when the time comes, the things that we're going to run into, and the possibility of setting up some of these SSD programs around the state. So that's every other Tuesday. The other Tuesdays, we are forming an Oregon Callers Association, which we've never had, a statewide. And the idea that you can meet without having to travel 200 or 300 miles to get there, and you're still face to face. Telephone calls to me have just become tedious. There's no way that I would sit on a telephone and talk for a half an hour with somebody, but if I can get them face to face like we are right now, it's hard to shut up, but I will shut up.
We've gotten to the point where the special equipment needed is a computer, and just about everybody has one, at least everybody that talks on Zoom, and access to the internet. So the technology's gotten so it makes it possible for everybody to do this. I mean, 20 years ago, we probably would have had 2 or 3 people on if we were lucky, and who knows what the technology would have been. Clark, go for it.
So your initial question is kind of, are you zoomed out? Have you had too much Zoom? What's Zoom like for you? And listening to the comments, let me back up for a bit and say, you know, how does time get spent during your day, be it a work day or a weekend? And you could be watching TV or watching YouTube videos of recorded Zoom sessions. You could be listening to podcasts, and you could be reading a book. You could be talking to someone who lives in your house, or you could just be working by yourself in peace and quiet. Or you could be on some sort of Zoom call. And when you're on a Zoom call, and for Zoom, I'm counting Teams and Google Hangouts and other things. It could be a one-on-one with somebody. It could be one with a small group, say a family size gathering, or it could be a larger group like this. And it could be someone mainly presenting, or a chat where everyone participates, kind of like kids in a classroom. And I think all of those are different. For myself, this is the only big call that I'm on regularly once a week. And that's kind of enough for me. I've occasionally watched videos of recorded calls like this only because the topic is of interest. And I think that's why you got so many hits on the Tony Parks talk, because it was a specific talk with a well-prepared presenter, and people who saw it told their friends, and that's how social media works. And that's how some things get, you know, 1 million hits or more. For work, I'm always on a call, almost always on a call with somebody, with one person, or maybe up to 5 or 10 on a particular topic, usually for no more than 30 minutes at a time. I've sat in on the Color Lab talks that have happened, the Color Lab meetings that have happened over the last couple of weeks, and those have been fascinating. One, I see people I haven't seen in a year, and two, the topic is usually of interest. It's the business meeting of the advanced committee or something, and it really has allowed participation around the world, be it Australia, Japan, England, Sweden, etc. And I think that's been great, and has been an eye-opener for people who haven't seen or met so many of those participants before. And I hope they continue, no more than once a quarter, but hopefully more than once a year. So when we say, are you zoomed out, it's what type of meetings have you been having that are kind of too many, and you kind of dread the next one rather than looking forward to it. For myself, only having this one each week, I kind of look forward to it. And I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know what Don's topic is, even if Don does. So anyhow, that's the way I think about it. And definitely COVID and not commuting has pushed out my time when I listen to podcasts, or my time when I do something else. So I think you have to think about how you're spending your time, and are you happy with it?
1 second, Keith. I wanted to comment on Daryl that our family got together for one birthday. I wish we would get together more often. You've got a cluster of, you can get physically together during non-COVID times, but mine spread out a bit more than that. And it was nice getting together that one time, and I ought to organize more. The one thing I did organize recently and hosted was my high school 64th reunion. And that worked out pretty well. We didn't have as many people as we had hoped, but we had enough, and I got to meet some old friends and make some new ones. And we're definitely looking forward to the 65th this way. The last one where we had a big gathering was the 50th. So it's another way that I look forward to the 65th, Clark, because it's only once a year. And I promised that I would edit the situation and publish the tape, and I haven't done that yet. But I'm glad I don't have to edit these. I do with my Wednesday and Thursday Zoom classes, so that the students can go back and re-listen to them. Keith, you had your hand up.
There we go. I'm using a little bit different device today, so unmuting it was not, just second nature. I find, well, I've hosted quite a few of them. I do one for church. I was doing 2 of them. And then, of course, we attend all of the board meetings and everything on Zoom now. And for the ukulele club that I've been a member of for like 10 or 15 years now, I was hosting that one. But what I found is, if you're hosting them, you've got to attend. The rest of them, you don't have to be there. You just show up if you want to. Like this meeting, I'm not here every Saturday. I'm here maybe every other Saturday or every 4th Saturday. I don't know. but I'm not hosting it. And by the way, a big thanks to Don and Dan for continuing to host this thing for what has probably been pretty close to a year now, every Saturday. And Mel does one, and same thing. He got started about the same time and pretty close to a year now. But I found that I need to take a break. You turn it over every once in a while and let somebody else host it. And that's what I've done, especially with the ukulele club. We go back and forth, me and another member. And I've got the pastor at the church. I said, look, I've been doing this long enough. Let's get somebody else in here to do it. We never knew it was going to last this long. And of course, we do all the church meetings and everything on Zoom. And those I have to attend. But there's some things that, you just don't have to be there for. And so the important thing is to get a break every once in a while if you're hosting a lot of meetings, and get somebody else to do it. I think that's about all I have to say about Zoom burnout.
But you do quite a bit more than just square dancing, which is what I know some of us do. Well, I don't do that much. It's mostly the square dance stuff.
Well, I get outdoors when I can nowadays. I mean, I play golf, I play tennis. I'm allowed to do both of them. Singles tennis. We played doubles, but I've been reintroduced to singles. It's kind of running my old body down, but I'm doing it anyway. And I also, I play music. I go from one instrument to the other, and I've been doing a certain amount of that. So, and I've also got a really good Netflix resume right about now too. So there's other things. Also mix it up with other things. Don't just go to Zoom meetings, I think is a good one.
Helen, you spent many years in front of a camera without the two-way communications. Is there similarities or differences? Does this ring a bell with some of that stuff?
I think maybe when I'm performing, I have some help from the things that I've learned during my work. But this is a different thing completely, because as you say, we're together in this, and we're just really talking and chatting and that kind of thing. So I don't think so. Not really. I just like to say, when you gave me the word that Zoom has been there, I think, but a lot of people haven't known about it. I certainly never used it before the pandemic. But as we now learn that this exists, the Swedish Association of Callers and Teachers, SACT, we've sort of started a group or started monthly gatherings where we're doing different topics. And this is something new. Sweden isn't a huge country, but we've always had trouble collecting people just sort of for this kind of session where you discuss and suddenly my English went out the window. And there are only 3 of you here that understand Swedish, so I have to get this together. Where you discuss things and teach people things. But now we're discovering that with Zoom, we're getting more people attending. And we're going to do our 3rd one, I think, on Monday or Tuesday. But I agree with you. Someone here said you're the host, and that means that you have to be there all the time. I tend to become the host to these things, and now I have quite a few Zoom sessions where I have to attend, and I can agree that although the subject's great and I love what I'm doing, sometimes I want to do something else at Wednesday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I can't because I'm the host. I have to do it. So, but I think Zoom is a wonderful instrument, and it's fantastic that I've discovered it and that everyone else is able to use it. I mean, I wouldn't have met any of you people almost if I hadn't learned about Zoom. So great.
I'd forgotten that Zoom really has been around for a long time, Helen. But I didn't know about it until the pandemic went and my wife's clinic physically closed down and started using Zoom to have their staff meetings and such. And by the way, even though we have 3 cameras here from Sweden, we actually have 4 people from Sweden. So there are 4 of you. And I'd apologize to the one we forgot, but I don't know whether it was Lars or Hannah.
Maybe I forgot myself.
Phil, what have you got to add?
I noticed
Spacebar's not working today. No, just a comment to Helen. The reason you're hosting, is it because you have the Zoom account?
Well, I'm in the committee for the Swedish Association of Callers and Teachers, of course, but mainly other things that I'm doing, yeah, it's because I have the pro account, so I can my meetings can be more than 40 minutes. Because
you can turn the hosting duties over to somebody that attends a meeting and then just kind of bow out if you had to.
I've done that on occasion. I've sort of started the meeting at 12 o'clock with someone, and I've made him host, and then I've sort of left the meeting. I've done that, but you have to have it in your calendar. You have to know about it. You have to make sure it works and that kind of thing. So yeah, I've done that. Okay. Thank you.
Bill, Carol's got something to say. Bill, I was going to say you haven't spoken much other than putting things in the comments that I have troubles going over there to read. So think of something to entertain us with after Carol talks.
It was just after Helen was saying about the caller club in Sweden are using Zoom. Caller clubs in England, the one that I belong to, which is NARCA, the northern area, we've been having once a month Zoom sessions in a similar way. But because of it, the other clubs or area clubs around the country in the UK have been joining in. So instead of our maybe 6 or 7 callers for our area, we've had maybe 40 people on from all the different areas, which has been wonderful. People we don't ever see. So it has been really good, and we're going to continue doing that, although we will have face-to-face ones as well. That's it. That's all I was going to say.
So I got a question. Sorry, Bill. But what's the optimum number for a Zoom session? We have been in the 20s in these sessions, and even though it'd be nice to have more people, although we have a variety of people cycling in and out, we have enough time for discussions. We try to keep the presentation short and go for discussion time. Whereas if you had 40 or 150 people, it might be difficult to have a discussion. Helen, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that 25, less than 25, because then we can all see each other. If there are more than 25 on my Mac anyway, I have to sort of go back and forth.
Same.
And when I do host meetings with more than 25, I tend not to be able to see the presentation because I'm going back and forth all the time, making sure that everybody's happy and that kind of thing. So I would say less than 25, but I don't know.
By the way, I've found that when I'm doing a presentation and still want to see faces, there's a point between, put your people in gallery view and you can slide it over so your presentation is tiny because you know what it is anyway, and you can still see faces even though smaller. Bill, I see you're unmuted. You're in the queue.
I am not zoomed out because I try to limit myself to maybe 1 or 2 Zoom meetings a week. Because early on when we started doing the Zoom meetings, the lack of participation in our clubs for people that were either afraid of doing Zoom or not aware, we just kept hammering people to get on a Zoom call and it didn't happen. So I kind of stayed off of Zoom. I have called several dances by Zoom. I agree in one regard that it's hard to make any connection with the dancers itself, but I do foresee that it will continue on for a number of callers for a couple of reasons in the future. One is that it brings in people from all over the world to come to a particular dance or somebody that likes you that they didn't have that opportunity before. One of the things that Danny and I do is we watch some of the technology shows like Click on TV that talks about future technologies that are going to happen. So it's one of the intriguing things that's come up recently is holographic contact through meetings like Zoom and things like that, where you actually get a sense a person is there. I can see that happening in 5 to 10 years. God forbid we have another pandemic, we're gonna have to do it. But me personally, I'm not quite zoomed out. I don't participate in a lot of Zoom dances. I don't participate in a lot of Zoom content like this, but I do enjoy it when I'm able to get on.
Still hoping that you'll think of something you'd like to share with us on one of these sessions, Bill.
It's possible. One of the interesting things, it's kind of off the topic of Zoom, is that I got totally burned out fairly early on the SSD discussions that were going on, partly because my whole square dance goal, starting from 1984 when I started calling, was to have that kind of a program as a freestanding program. And it was, I couldn't advertise to get people into it. I couldn't get local clubs to participate in it. And the clubs that I hear talking about it now are ones that are still using it as wanting it to be an entry-level program so that people can still pop into other programs in the future rather than have it be a freestanding program. So there are some Zoom topics I've gotten totally away from because of politics and all that stuff. But I'm glad these venues and opportunities still do arise to have this discussion. I would never be talking to people from Sweden and Norway and Finland normally.
I love the concept of the SSD. I haven't looked into the details. I've seen a few that I'm uncomfortable with the concept. And not only for people that don't want to spend all their life with it, just want to get into something easy that they can work with. But it's also a great place, or they can go on if they want it. But I think it's also a great place, and people haven't talked about this, that people used to square dance, but they don't want to spend as much time. They'd love to come back now that the kids, they're empty nesters again or what have you, and they think the learning curve is too big to get back into the current program. SSD is a nice place for them to land and go back and review and enjoy dancing again. So I think that part of the concept is good.
I'm assuming also, as one final thing before I shut down again, that most of the callers here are getting comments from their dancers saying we're going to have to relearn everything. So you better be doing a lot of workshops if we restart.
I always, people say, well, I haven't danced in a while. What's going to happen? I say, well, it's just like riding a bike. When you fall, you get hurt. Sorry about that. Mel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, one of the comments that was just made, there's a few people that are actually doing introductions to square dancing and basic mainstream reviews, etc., on Zoom, movement by movement learning, which is, you know, really, really great to get their dancers prepared. And on those, there are actually a lot of dancers and a lot of local club dancers that are tuning into their local caller for that review session. I've been doing this type of a session now for about 2.5 years, but we were using things like Skype or Messenger for it. Zoom for me has become excessively functional as far as the groups. And we've had groups over 100, but on average about 35 to 40 on the Sunday sessions. And they are quite manageable with the discussion as long as there's a certain amount of the rules that are followed. I noticed that in the Caller Lab sessions and whatnot, also in the class sessions that are going, there's really, really good things, but there's not a lot of room for discussion. It's a presentation, it's a fire and forget, here's the notes, go away and learn it on yourself. And there's not a lot of interactive discussion, which is one of the reasons why this session, why mine and a couple of the other ones get so many great comments, is there is room for discussion, there is room for that social rapport, but also there is room for debate and coming at things from different opinions and looking at things different, that you feel welcome to participate, whereas in some of the other ones you don't. As far as Zoom goes, it's been a radical change for me. I'm involved in a state Wheats conference, the State Rangers conference. I've got a couple national things going on, and it's either Zoom or Teams or another one that are constant meetings because we have an open office concept, because somebody in the 60s wrote a stupid report that said that's a good idea when it absolutely wasn't. I actually got permission from my boss, said, right, if I've got these meetings probably about 3 or 4 a week, I come home and do them because at least I know I've got a computer that works and I've got relative quiet in the background. One of the things that I keep hearing on Zoom is, oh, we've got to know how to minimize the screen and put 2 screens together. I went out and bought myself a very cheap monitor. It's a large monitor. It's about $100. It's a 25-inch or 26-inch monitor. I just plug it into the computer and I set it up with 2 monitors. I have had absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. Going back and forth, my big monitor is the presentation screen. My little monitor is everybody in the Zoom in the chat window. With the chat, you have Dan doing a lot of your technical stuff, and I stole that idea. Mark was here. Mark Hart. Yeah, he must have gone off again. But Mark does the technical work for the background in my session. You know, keeps an eye on the door, keeps an eye on the chat window, and everything else if I'm presenting, and vice versa. And if you are going to be hosting these sessions, it is always good to have somebody as a co-host in case you do get bumped out. That way the meeting can continue, or to do all the technical stuff and follow the chat, make notes. I have a notepad and I have about 3 or 4 pages of questions on each session that we go through. But what is really, really nice, and the biggest compliment I see from yours, Dawn, is when you guys are presenting or you have a presenter down, let's say Clark is talking about something. If there's something current to what he's presenting, feel free to interject on that topic. If you have a question that's relevant, you send a question in the chat. Dan or yourself will read them afterwards and deal with those questions, and then it opens up for discussion. And that's where I find is the actual power, because nobody is really left out.
By the way, if you are running a chat, a Zoom session, and Dan has to worry about this one, but I do my mental image classes. There is a feature that it took a while to discover, because I'd be talking and then somebody would be joining and somebody else would say, hey, so-and-so's in the waiting room, let them in. If you go, you have your participants window open, and lower right-hand corner, there's something that says more, and you click on that and go down and it says ring a bell when somebody enters or leaves. So you don't have to keep monitoring that. I wish that was the default that would stay, but you have to set it every time. But it really is pretty handy.
One of the things that I do is when I have the gallery view, I click I minimize I click participants, I minimize the screen and put it back up. So I've got my participants down the right side. Then when I click chat, my chat comes up. I've got my participants and I've got the chat window underneath it. That way, if somebody does come into the waiting room, it always shows up at the top of the participants window. Same kind of thing.
Some of us were just talking about the refreshing for the people that haven't danced for a year and are wondering about that. Phil, you were talking about that earlier. What kind of a format do you have for reviewing this stuff and keeping people, their minds thinking?
Basically, I take a handful of calls and review them as if I was teaching them, but knowing in the background that they already know how to do this. It's just getting that muscle memory back. And I usually do like 3 separate tips and go over the calls and throw in a singing call that has something relevant to it.
So it's not just reciting the definitions, but it's actually dancing them through.
It's actually dancing them through. And I have a focus couple, and I have them demonstrate how to do the calls ahead of time, which people love that.
And a lot of callers were counted. Well, there are full-time callers, but a lot of of us non-full-time callers still relied on the additional income. And the Zoom model generally doesn't have income. Has anybody thought about how that works or should work, or am I just missing out and everybody else is charging money?
Right now on mine, I do it strictly by donation. And trust me, the dancers have been very generous, which is nice, because they know that we don't have that income coming in. And I know, even though Zoom, the account I have is like $15 a month, it's still an expense for me. So it more than covers that. Plus, it gives me a little bit for my time. I mean, I put a lot of time into these things.
So a tip box works.
Tips, donations. I hate to call them tips. I really do. I just say it's a donation.
Interesting. That's why. What's aside from that we have square dance tips, but
Well, taxes wise, there's a big difference between tips and donations.
Gotcha. Keith?
I'd be interested to know how you collect your tips. I know that I don't have anything for sale, by the way, but some of the online music teachers will use Patreon, and they'll give one level of instruction participation to the Patreon members and another to the general public, just to kind of draw people in. But do you have a tip box or something that you have electronically working, or what, Phil?
I have a PayPal account that I use. Some of the other callers are using this Venom or whatever it is, and Zelly.
Venmo?
Or I have them I give them my address and they mail me a check.
Checks in the mail.
Gotta love it.
The problem with checks is if it's coming from outside the country, it's got to be drawn on a U.S. bank or it's a real problem. I found that out selling books for over 40 years. Right. But PayPal has been made things really convenient, and they don't take too much of the profit there. Although I don't charge I haven't been charging for any Zoom stuff. My next classes will be having a token fee to help cover expenses.
And if it's regular, you can use Patreon, I suppose. I don't know exactly what the mechanics of it are, but a lot of the people that teach on YouTube, they use it. YouTube does live sessions, by the way, too. You can stream it.
One thing with PayPal is to avoid those charges is have them send it to you personally.
Yes, you do have some charges with PayPal.
Well, it's just the convenience with PayPal of converting to a U.S.
Right.
People in Sweden and Japan can just pay in U.S. dollars, and they don't have to worry about getting a postal money order or what have you, and then taking 3 weeks for it to get here or what have you. I mean, it speeds things up in a lot of respects too. And I don't mind the token thing that is taken away. In fact, I could actually put out I could actually take credit cards if I have to. We did for the bed and breakfast for quite a while through Square.
Oh yeah, there's Square.
Carol?
I know we're talking about Zoom and you were talking about dancing new people or people who haven't been dancing for a long time. I would say that 95% of our club has not been on Zoom, and I can't encourage them. Whatever I do, they will not have a go. So they will, the ones that will only start dancing when they've got a face-to-face dancer, caller, and they will be reviewed right through from start again.
I think that's a good point, is to let people know that I might not remember, and you just say you're in the majority. Nobody will. We're going to start wherever we have to get you back in.
It's there's so much Zoom stuff going on that I'm sure right at this minute there's a dance going on somewhere, maybe 5 or 10, I don't know. It seems like there's Zoom dances constantly every day of the week at all hours, and it's hard to, one issue with Zoom is just trying to find a time when you can have whatever Zoom meeting you're trying to have without interfering with somebody's dance. But one thing to remember is that there's only a very tiny fraction of Square dancers who are doing Zoom. Most of them are not interested at all. They think it's stupid, or they just not. It just seems too foreign to them, or it just seems like it's going to be, whatever the barrier to entry is. I think a lot of it is that it's not sufficiently social. They don't get the sense of community and whatever. In addition to, they just think that acting out the things with phantoms is stupid. So there's only a tiny number of people that are actually doing the Zoom stuff. So when we turn Square dancing back on, hopefully we'll be able to get those guys back. But don't be mistaken into thinking that everybody's been doing Zoom all along. It's only a tiny little fraction of people that are doing it.
As far as different time slots, people doing everything else, we claim this 11 a.m. Eastern time. We've been doing this for almost a year now. It's our time, right? Nobody can complain about that. I think I saw another hand up. Mikhail, John, go ahead.
I was just wondering what level Zooms are you using? We bought a basic Zoom for one of our clubs, and it doesn't have near the features that some of these do. But what level Zoom are you using, Don?
We're using
since I signed up, on mine, I can't remember. I just did. It's a $15 a month, and I can't remember what the options were.
That's all I've got too. Is that same whatever the cheap one is, and yeah.
We have one. I think they paid $149 a year for it or something like that, and we can't have co-hosts. It's either a host, one guy's a host, or the other guy's a host. What do you have, Mel?
I just when the COVID thing hit, we switched from Skype and Messenger over to Zoom at the $15 a month deal, and it's just static that way.
I have to go look and see what that is all about. Is that $15 a month, or can you pay like $149 a year or something like that?
I honestly don't know. I'm just looking to see.
They keep running specials. If you instead of the $15 a month, I get offers every few months, it seems, where they're saying, if you want to go to an annual subscription instead of the monthly one, then I think it's usually less than 15 times 12, right? I mean, that's the hook.
Well,
$149.
That pays for.
Yeah, 149 would be less.
That pays for 10 months, and so you'd be getting 12 months for the cost of 10. I know when I signed up, and I'm sure when Dan did, whoever thought this would be going for a year, I'm not going to commit myself that long.
I went 90 for. Or I went $15 a month, I think, through June, and then in June they offered me a $90 for the year, and I dived on it. So
I'll have to look at it. I got a stimulus check coming down the road, so maybe I can stimulate my Zoom account.
Can I just say that you have to realize that being the host gives you a lot of more options than not being a host. So if someone not being the host starts to click around here, you won't find any of the things that being a host entitles you to. So you know that there's a difference.
I was made the host on the one we were using, but I didn't see any place where you could make somebody a co-host. So it always had to be only one person could be the host or the other. So
it could be
like it's a different version of what you're doing.
But it could be that as you were made co-host, it was the actual host that could give several other people the chance to be co-hosts.
We never had co-hosts. We always had one person was the host or the other person was no place to find a co-host.
I believe that in order to set up the co-host, you have to use the web interface to enable the co-host capability before you start the meeting.
Oh, well, maybe I don't know, because I didn't download the program.
Well, I do it once I've started the meeting. I give someone else co-hostship, and that works for me. And then I can leave the meeting if I want to.
Yeah, you can do that if you have the $15 a month one. The corporate level one, you can have multiple co-hosts and multiple hosts on the same account. You know, you could name somebody, you're the host this week, you're the host that week, and all the numbers in the account is the same. But that one's very expensive. I think it's like $500 a year.
Hey, speaking of things that you set up on the web interface, the last time I checked, you can still set it so that your meeting will not have a waiting room at all. People will just be admitted immediately, and I think that's still there. And so but I noticed that most of the people are not doing that. Almost everybody does the waiting room thing, and I wonder why. Why?
Oh, I explained that, Chris. It's to keep the Zoom bombers out.
Are there really Zoom bombers showing up to Square Dances?
Yeah, surprisingly enough, yes. We do get a few people that log in and they stay there, and then when you try and interact with them, they just disappear. There are a number that just tune in for that reason.
Well, that's just a lurker. Who cares about that?
I can explain why that happens, Chris. What happened was a lot of these were set up without a password originally, a lot of the meetings. And then Zoom instituted the requirement to where you either had to have a password or a waiting room, one or the other. And so they weren't too open about this. So they just took, and their preferred method is the waiting room. So they changed everything to waiting room that didn't have a password. If it had a password, they left it alone. You can change it back to where it's a password and people can just let themselves in if they have the password. You go either way.
The passwords, I think, are embedded in the URL if you do that. So it's still just you click on the link, so it's not like they have to type in a password.
That's exactly right. Except for the URL for this meeting.
So yeah, I turn off the waiting room until the group start, or until 8 o'clock my time, and then I turn it back on. I have been through 2 Zoom bombings and various other ones, and it's just nice to have a little bit more resistance to that.
Control.
Yeah. I wanted to toss out a couple comments about technology that's largely sparked by my voice teacher and I finally got all of the technology chain in a place where it wasn't intrusive for my voice lesson on Thursday. And this is after a year of trying various things, from FaceTime to Zoom to finally buying some dedicated hardware for the low latency audio portions, and then using a website called obs.ninja for the video conferencing, because that let us control how much bandwidth she was using on her lame ass Comcast account, so that we didn't get stutter on the audio. And as I look at, like, somebody, I think it was Clark, suggested this kind of half 8-bit orthogonal view VR and video chat system. I'm kind of thinking about what can facilitate more the sense of breakout rooms, and ways that if you went to like actual caller lab, you'd end up having hallway discussions and things like that. Anyway, I'm looking for more of those, because that eye opener of, oh, this is the first time when we haven't been concentrating on the technology voice lesson this Thursday was amazing.
One of the things that I'm hoping will happen in technology, but I don't think is available yet, is that the cameras will not be above the screen or below the screen or off a separate one to the side, but somehow they would put it through the glass on your display so that people can be looking at the camera and looking at the display at the same time. I know my eyes are usually closed unless I look up here at the camera, in which case I can't see what the reactions are from anybody. But
it's technically possible to do that, and the similar stuff is starting to appear in some high-end phones. I think maybe not ones that are available in this country, but I haven't heard anybody talk about putting them into. Oddly enough, haven't heard anybody talk about putting them into regular desktop computer monitors for some reason.
Well, maybe with Zoom, it'll be incentive for people who will be looking for that. Carol?
We were noticing that the cameras on laptops are not terribly good. They're nothing like as good as they are on a telephone, on your iPhones. That it was seen that if they put a better camera on the laptops, that would help, because they haven't got many bits in them for the sharpness.
I had a handful of various different external cameras when the pandemic started, and because I had a number of laptops with built-in laptops, I ended up sending off all my very nice cameras to other people who didn't have cameras, and now I regret that.
One of the things we forgot to do about 15 minutes ago was say that our hour's up. You guys are coming and discussing, and if you have to leave, which don't make excuses, just go, which some of people have done already anyway. But I do have a presenter for next week, and a few for coming soon. This was kind of a last minute thrown together by Dan and myself, and I knew you guys would provide discussion and we'd go somewhere with it. I hope some of it was interesting and entertaining. It came about because Dan and I, we're not zoomed out as such, but as I say, the stressful part of this is putting together, is coming up with presenters every time. It's kind of a full-time job, not only doing the session, but I guess Phil was saying the preparation for it and all the time that goes into it. And for me, the preparation for this is making phone calls, which I enjoy talking to the people. But what do you mean you want me to present tomorrow? Although I've had some people give in to that. Unlike Mel, who's about 4 or 5 or 6 weeks ahead of us pre-programming. I my philosophy is don't do today what you can put off till tomorrow.
I was going to procrastinate, but I never got around to it.
That's my philosophy for when you're resolving too.
Yeah. And as we talked about last time, that's one of my points on critiquing, how long is each sequence.
How long?
Well, when you're a beginner, of course, it's head square through 4. Gee, I better start resolving now.
Yeah, change hands, Alaman left.
That's right.
I'm looking at spin the net right now. Don, you might recognize that.
I knew it had something to do with the quarter tag formation, but that's all I can remember.
It's one of yours.
Yeah, I know. That's how I knew it. I remember that's how the name came up because
Can I give a stab at it? Because I don't remember it at all, but I'm betting, do we scoot back from the quarter tag and the outside's quarter right, promenade a quarter and face in while the center's, I don't know, fan the top or something?
No, that's scoot and relocate.
Ah, crap.
No, spin the net is from an 8-chain or a corner box. Is the, if I remember correctly, is the spin the top, creates the wave in the center of the center force, spin the top, the outsides cast 3/4 and the dancer facing out, run, and in the quarter tag.
Yep, okay.
The only thing I remember about the call is that I think I learned something called change the web around the same time.
Change the web's still in use.
Yeah.
All I remember is that a quarter tag formation in my mind, which I used to think of as a ping pong formation, is a net between players on either side, and that's where the net comes in on spin the net. How did it go again?
Stupidly enough, I've been trying to figure out how you got the net reference, and when you say that, it's so blatantly obvious. It just never twigged.
Yeah, when I first came up with the circulate path and looking for a name for it, I thought tennis circulate. Oh God, that doesn't sound good. And that's why ping pong circulate just had a better ring to it. Yeah, there's a net between players. That's
the other topical call that I also don't remember the definition of, that I'm pretty sure is still on the list in use, was stimulate the column. That's still a call, right, Clark?
Yep, still used.
Yeah.
Starts from columns.
Yep.
What level are these at?
C4.
Ah, okay.
Spin the net was there's a mainstream quarterly back way back. It's just every now and then, like I'm looking on doing some editing on behind the mic, and it was one of the things that come up was the experimental workshops figures from the past, and the one that we've chosen this time is spin the net.
Oh, you're actually using it?
Yeah.
So
we're not using it to call. It's just we're bringing up these things, some of the things that were to put them into the lexicon, because one of the things with, for instance, spin the net at SSD would work absolutely fantastic as a one-night workshop experimental type thing into fire and forget movement.
I was trying to think of something about it while you were explaining to Clark what it was, and I missed. Tell me again what it is.
Okay, so from an 8-chain box, okay, dancers spin the top, that creates the tidal wave. The center force spin the top. At the same time, the two ends, they cast off 3/4, and the dancer facing out run.
3/4 in the ends.
Yeah, basically, square through, swing through, spin the net is the same as heads past the ocean.
Okay.
And the call was written by Don Beck in 1984. Month L, if you call January A. I don't know what L is, but it's pretty far through the year. It was a quarterly selection in October 1985, and it was dropped in 1986, but I don't know the month. How's that for a database?
SSD spin the top is not in the program.
No, I realize that. That's why I said if you're looking for a fire and forget movement, it's an easy workshop. It's an easy flow, and it flows really, really nice. And then if you're actually looking for material, if you have anything that says heads past the ocean, that's your ending formation. If you do a head square through, swing through, spin the net, it's the same as calling heads past the ocean. So once you've taught it, you can use it for a tip and then throw it away, which is what the SSD program is. You've got your program, and once you've extended or you want to do something, you can introduce anything you want for a night and then get rid of it, because that's not going to alter your program at all.
So Mel, have you published that behind the mic yet?
No, that's going to be this month's March.
So now you can mention what the net's all about.
It's Barry. Barry actually published it in figuring way back in the early 80s.
Okay.
And whatnot. So it's just pulling up different things from the past.
I could probably give you dozens of those.
Oh yeah. I think we might have drawn one or two.
Kopman had some suffix called quite a long time ago. I'm guessing it was around 1990. I have no recollection whatsoever what it was, but it was a suffix call like roll or spread or something, and it was .com.
Of course he would have done that.
Any call .com.
I found this pretty interesting today with talking about all these Zoom things. It's something that Dan and I came up with at the last minute because we couldn't think of anything except all this Zoom stuff. As I say, I do have some programs coming up, but we're constantly open to suggestions or volunteers. I had suggested one to Dan and told him not even to think about it, but because so many people forget to unmute when they talk, I suggested a class in lip reading. But we don't plan on that. Don't count on that. Should we any other comments before we realize that we don't have any other comments?
No, I think you had a great topic. Zoom is one of those things that is going around. There are so many people that are using it at different levels for different things. As I said, I use it for work constantly these days, and I do probably about 3 or 4 of these sessions a week on Zoom. Some of them last for hours. I think it's a great format. There's a lot of callers that have been asking that the programs continue, these types of training sessions and everything else actually continue after we get back to dancing, because there's a lot of them that don't have the advantage or the ability to get to a caller school to talk about these particular topics, nor when they do go to a caller school, they get the topic, but there's no chance to actually digest it, talk about it, and do everything, because you go home at night, you're trying to go through everything, and then you're inundated with another fire hose the next day. So yeah, there is a lot of these things. It gives us the ability to take one topic and break it down into 5 or 6 sessions, which is, instead of 15 minutes at a caller school and then some mic time, you can get 5 hours, 11 hours of discussion, put it in practice, and then take it back into the real world, which is what a lot of newer callers like. I did have one question for you, Don. I had a number of queries from the Japanese callers and a couple from the Australians of the mental image thing that you were talking about. Did you get any takers from that?
Yes, I was going to mention that in a second. The first thing, as a segue into it, I was going to say we should have been doing this on a regular basis, but ending with advertisements. Mel, what have you got online tonight or tomorrow morning?
Well, today is Betsy Gotta is coming back on another session of programming. We've done about 5 so far. It's one of those that you need about 400 sessions just to cover the topic of programming because there's so much to it. But Betsy Gotta is coming in to talk about that today. And then for the next 2 weeks, the following week, I'm not having a session because it's my daughter's wedding and my wife said no. I said I could take the camera down, but no, she said no. And the week after that, we're not having a session because that is the Color Lab online convention. So this will be our last session for 2 weeks. And then the following session, I believe we've got Mike Sikorsky coming up.
I haven't looked at our schedule here compared to Color Lab, and we really should, because that definitely will take priority. I just want to put in the 2 cents worth to answer your question and a few others. I will be starting 2 new, one for sure, and probably 2 new mental image class sessions this Wednesday. One of them for sure at 8 a.m. Eastern time, which I've got to figure out when that is. That means me getting, not only setting an alarm, but with the addition of daylight savings time, which I don't know if it comes before or after that happens. I might have to get up 4 hours early. But we have, I believe, 4 Japanese students, 4 to 5, and 1 Australian at this point will be joining that. And I will be doing another one at our 11 a.m. Eastern time slot that we've been doing it, another new one, which currently has 1 person from US East Coast, 1 person from Germany, and I believe Yolanda, if you're actually going to be with us, which I believe you said you wanted to come in and take it again, continue as an overlap to the previous one, we'll have 1 Canadian, and John has left, but I think John will be joining us from East Coast US too. So yeah, there's still room. There's definitely room in the classes. They will be starting this coming Wednesday, both at 8 o'clock Eastern US time and 11 o'clock Eastern US time. That should give me time to take a slight break between them and regroup myself. And probably the lesson 1 of both of them will be the same. And then as has been the case, each group is different. And lesson 2 and 3, they will more be personalized to whoever's in the group and what have you. So Helen, are you going to have one of your Swedish Zoom sessions before that you can pass the word? Or
I've already put it on our SACT Facebook.
Okay.
I'll mention it. I think on Monday we'll be having it, so I'll mention it on Monday. And
so
I might join you for the next session as well. I'm not so confident that I'll be able to use mental image if I should start it next time I call. So I might be looking in.
I can't remember if it was you or Carol that asked Wednesday when we were talking about ping pong circulate, is a technical 0 with an X before and after, whether the X has to be in the middle. And I know Helen, you said you would go do that on your own and try to figure it out. I went and checked, and it was interesting that it does not have to be in the middle. If you cancel it in the same location that you did it, the spot, you change actives because it's a technical 0. If you do it in a different location, the spot moves in the same rules that it did before. It was kind of interesting. We'll have to look at that more closely next Wednesday.
Don, I'd like to just add one thing.
Yes.
A lot of these, if you're like me and you put out the times in the different parts of the world for your sessions, I put those up early. Just remember that in the US, the time change is this weekend. For the rest of the world, it's a little bit later. So
I've been trying to put up UTC times. And,
I tried that, but eventually I just came to the conclusion I'll just go across, okay, in New York, in Phoenix, and here.
Yes, I noticed you publish a lot of material here.
It just makes it easier, you know. If you're in Germany, you know you're in it. If you're in England, you know you're in this time zone. If you're, you know, so it just made it easier for people.
It makes it easier for the people that need it, but for people like me who have to read it 5 times on 5 different sites,
Yeah.
and then you remind us again a few days later. I've gotten to see, oh, it's Mel Wilkerson. Delete. Oh my God, that was just to me. Don't undelete it.
I don't know if anybody has made this observation yet, but I predict that less than a year from now, there's going to be a live square dance. People will be dancing along. The caller will say Zoom, and at least one square will stop in their tracks, whip out their phones, and start punching away, trying to comply with the call.
Start yelling out, "Can I have the password?"
Right. Does anybody know the background of the square dance call Zoom?
No. Clark does.
Clark does.
Just give him a minute to look it up.
He knows the numbers. Anyway, there was this guy, probably still is, named Gus Green, that during the heyday of creating new stuff, that constantly created new calls, and they were always anywhere from involved to very involved. And one summer he came out with Zoom, which is much less involved than most things, which did nothing but repeat what a substitute does, except has different hand motions and such. And I'm personally convinced the only reason that it caught on was in that heyday, the creation of new calls slowed down during the summer. And so it was the biggest thing that summer because there was not much at all that summer. and it took off from there. I may be right, I may be wrong, but that's the way I always took it.
1972 is when it came out. And like, it's like Gus's only winner. He has like over 100 losers, but that's one of the few calls that made it.
Hopefully, dancers, they make noises like woot woot on track 2 and so forth. Hopefully the response noise for Zoom will not be a floor of dancers yelling, "Mute yourself."
That would be good.
Or unmute yourself. Yeah, one of the.
So I actually have one thing to end on, if I could, is we mentioned GatherTown. Dan had a little bit of interest. I've always wanted to take a group, like we're just about to disband. If any of you have a moment, I put a link in the chat. Make sure you grab it before you leave this Zoom call, because you won't have the chat window. And if we all just go there, we can play with GatherTown for a couple of minutes and then leave, but you'll get to see how it works with a few people in it. You basically just use your arrow keys to walk around. And when you're near people, the video and audio is joined with you and them, and you can talk to them. So a couple of chats up is GatherTown. And as soon as I leave here, in fact, I'll leave now, I'll be in my GatherTown. Yes?
Before you go, I believe there's a notion to create a space, or just go
I've
into it
created a space. Mine's called Clark Baker Test. And you're all just going to go into Clark Baker Test.
Okay. I will find.
Do people see the link? It's at 1224.
Well, oh, there we go. Got it.
So I'm going to go there now. I joined in my browser, so I didn't have to load anything or do anything other than give it permission to use my camera and my microphone. And hopefully it's easy enough, and you'll just get a sense of what it's all about, and we'll like it or not like it. And then I won't stay for more than 5 minutes. And I see Helen's going to say something.
Yeah, I've clicked on it and I've got it up here, but how do I know I'm going to go to the room that you've created?
I think, my link there that I put in the chat, not just GatherTown, the main URL, but that whole long link that ends with Clark Baker Test is the one you want to go to.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anyone else?
I will see you all there after a short bathroom break.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, son. See you in a couple of weeks.
Will do. Enjoy the wedding.
Yeah.
I'll be